I grew up in a house that shaped my entire being. I started to question the validity of my strict Christian household. I began to understand depression is real, and you can't just pray it away. I would sneak out twice a week to go meet a boy I had no business meeting with. I had a nightmare and encountered a shadow person for the first, and luckily only time. But it was that one experience that opened a whole new world for me, a world I can't escape, even if I try. I began delving into the occult, witchcraft, anything paranormal, anything that wasn't Christianity. I became a nice little character foil in my own house. Now that I'm older and moved out, all those things that I did to be rebellious ended up sticking. I became my own person. Believe it or not, my parents still love me. What stuck the most, however, is the house itself. Now that I'm an adult and live far from that evil place, I find myself still uneasy. It's decided to haunt my dreams. When the dream happens, someone I love dies. And the goddamn dream doesn't leave me alone. The first time I dreamed, the death that followed was my friend, Max. He had been diagnosed with cancer, and while he was going to die, he did do a good job at staying alive longer than anyone thought. But a week before he died, I had a feeling that it was coming, and coming fast. I was in that house, alone, and very uneasy. Every room I entered was haunted by specters. They never tried to harm me, but nonetheless I was terrified. All around me were ghastly white figures of animals and humans alike. They had discernible features, a German shepherd here, a female child about 7 years old there. I walked through the downstairs, upstairs, and attic level of the house before coming down the back staircase by the basement door. It was always at this time I would have the overwhelming urge to run out the back. It felt as if I was going to be fighting for my life. However, before I could take another step, I would somehow be inside of the basement, pounding at the door to the house. I could hear it walking up behind me, slow and deliberate footsteps. As I was coming up the stairs, my panic grew. I needed to get out. I knew if I didn't, I would join the others as nothing more than a statue of a soul. Then, right before he touched me, I would wake up. I had that dream every night for exactly a week before Max had no choice but to succumb to the cancer eating his body. If it was a one-time incident, I'd understand it as coincidence, but it happened again. And this time when it happened, I did everything I could to not end up in that basement. It was at that point I realized I was not in control of my body, only my mind. I still ended up pounding on that basement door, begging to a God I no longer believed in. After a week of waking up terrified, my grandmother passed. I chalked that one up to coincidence too. In my own head, I made it no more than my subconscious creating a pattern. But the next 2 times I couldn't shake it off as nothing. I couldn't pass off the dream predicting the following deaths as nothing. No, something was going on, and I was powerless. I had that dream for a week straight, and for a week straight I could not for the life of me figure out who was going to die. I didn't know anyone on the brink of death. I didn't know anyone with a physical illness bound to take them. Then my best friend died. Turns out she tried to leave her chronically ill husband because she was tired of living a lie. I'm not sure what he said to her, but she drove 45 minutes away and hung herself. I was even more disturbed to find that I had woken up from the nightmare screaming at the same time as her time of death. At this point I knew I couldn't stop it. I knew when I had these dreams, someone was going to die. But what I wasn't prepared for was that whatever this was, having the ability to make sure the universe guaranteed these deaths. Eli came next. I had dated his twin brother, Alex. They had lived a state away at that time. He came to visit me, and it surprised me by putting down money on an apartment for us in my home state. He went back home to tell his parents that morning, but while taking a walk with his mom, he instead told her to tell me he loved me and threw himself in front of a semi-truck. I was devastated. A lot of the time it still lingers with me, 7 years later, a constant feeling that I should have done more. I kept close with his family. They were my family too. They still are, if I'm being honest. But I digress. So imagine my surprise, my overwhelming grief, when I had that dream for a week straight, only for Eli to die. He had been driving himself home from his parents. His husband and daughter were following in another vehicle, but by some miracle got lost and weren't witness to his death. Eli was hit by a semi-truck when the driver fell asleep at the wheel. He was killed instantly. What I still can't wrap my mind around was that it was a truck from the same company that Alex was killed by. I haven't had any nightmares since then, and no one close to me has died. There's one thing that scares me more than the inevitability of the dreams and the grief that will follow, though. What lives with me is the constant fear that something out there knows and can orchestrate these deaths, and that it all stems from that house and whatever has lived there for far longer than anyone else has.